It's missile testing. The trip also comes as the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative puts China at the top of an annual blacklist for lax enforcement of intellectual property rights. The office said China continues to be the largest origin economy for counterfeit and pirated goods. And President Biden will be meeting with the so-called Quad, meaning Australia, Japan, and India, in the hopes of forging stronger partnerships to contain China. In Washington, Jill Nato, Fox News.
An extensive state investigation launched after the police killing of George Floyd in 2020 has found the Minneapolis Police Department has engaged in a pattern of racial discrimination for at least the past decade. The Minnesota Department of Human Rights will negotiate a court-enforceable consent decree with the city to address a long list of problems identified in the report. New York's highest court rejecting new congressional maps seen as favoring Democrats. State Court of Appeals agreeing Wednesday with a group of Republican voters who say the district boundaries had been unconstitutionally gerrymandered. Thanks to a break in the weather, firefighters in New Mexico say they've made progress fighting a big wildfire that scorched nearly 100 square miles, but the weather expected to take a turn Thursday and Friday.
The primary danger looks to be just those very strong gusty winds and those dry conditions, and the ground conditions are very dry, so they're going to support the spread of wildfire.
Meteorologist Harry Weinman at the National Weather Service Storm Prediction Center. A prairie fire in Nebraska is now reported to be about 75% contained. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Half a day. Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns a property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has the management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
Subway's Eat Fresh Refresh does it again, bringing back a classic fan favorite on the menu. The roast beef returns. And not just any roast beef, it's choice Angus roast beef, flavorful and satisfying on its own, or layered with oven-roasted turkey and Black Forest ham in the Subway Club. Whether you're a choice Angus roast beef purist or like the variety of the Subway Club, both come piled high on hearty multi-grain bread with fresh hand-sliced veggies. Get your fill of the new roast beef at Subway. Eat fresh.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, not even for a minute, not even for a second. Put 'em up, put 'em up. Okay, so here we are in Tall Tales, and as usual, we start out with Zemi Kotny, and we have an editorial from the Progressive Daily News, formerly known as the Pacific Daily News. It's pretty progressive. This editorial is pretty progressive. And here's the title. Our view, policies protecting children from abusive parents are a great way to protect life. Abusive parents, Jose, like the kind of parents that would kill the child in the womb. Let's protect them from that. Last week, the Pacific Daily, the Progressive Daily News posed the question, should the Guam Heartbeat Act of 2022 become public law? The response was overwhelming, as impassioned arguments for and against Bill 291 flooded our social media platforms and inboxes. The response was so overwhelming that the only thing that could run on Sunday was a long letter that Carlotta Leon Guerrero had written to the Post 4 days earlier, and a short letter written by our very own Jose Martinez, the heart of which had been cut out. Can you once again refresh our recollection, Jose, on what they cut out of your email, of your story?
They cut out exactly what I was talking about in the letter, is that they don't want to talk about abortion. So I had described a couple of methods, not graphically, just described them.
Yeah.
And they decided it wasn't worth printing.
But it was probably at the end of the editorial, so they cut it off for length considerations?
No.
Where was it?
It wasn't at the beginning. It was smack dab in the middle of the paragraph.
So they went into the middle of your letter to the editor and cut out the part that described what the word abortion really means.
They performed one on my letter.
And after having solicited comments on the strongest anti-abortion bill going right now. So they wanted to talk about everything except for
abortion.
Abortion, yeah. Well, they haven't changed much, but they said the response was overwhelming as impassioned arguments for and against Bill 291 flooded our social media platforms and inboxes. I didn't have time to run my letter. I sent a letter, and they could not have said, well, it's too long. I'll get to that in a minute. Okay. The debate that ensued was a clear demonstration of the kind of healthy discourse necessary for a community and its government to develop and implement sound public policy, so long as we get to cut out the key parts of the letters that participants furnish us. Yeah. I think that they hired a guy named Jack Dorsey to help them edit this editorial submissions.
Those twits.
Yeah. Yeah. We maintained in our Sunday Forum editorial regarding the Heartbeat Act that all citizens are entitled to their opinions and beliefs on matters of abortion, life, and choice. Well, I'm so glad to know that the Daily News has recognized that, because I have a feeling that if they had anything to do with it, that would not be the situation. We believe strongly in the right to free speech, much like we believe strongly in every patient's right to medical privacy. Straw man alert, beep, 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 straw man alert. So we're not going to talk about abortion now. We're going to talk about the right to medical privacy. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's website, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996, also referred to as HIPAA, is a federal law that required the creation of national standards to protect sensitive patient health information from being disclosed without the patient's consent or knowledge. This, in turn, established a privacy rule that set standards for every individual's right to understand and control how their health information is used and to ensure that information is protected. Okay, so we started out here talking about abortion. Now we're going to talk about a statute, a national law statute, right? And as the pro-life, pro-choice debates, let me translate that into English for you. As the anti-abortion, pro-abortion debate waged on, we were clear in our message that lawmakers should focus their time and resources on doing more to protect and support lives outside of the womb. Pay no attention to those lives inside the womb. Yeah, so there you go, and that's exactly it. Yeah, abortion's okay. And second, straw man number two, unless you have taken in 36 foster children and built them a separate house for them to live in and treated them as though they were the offspring of, or not the offspring, but the friends of Michael Jackson, treated them that well. You don't have standing to talk about abortion.
Why is it that these kind of certain groups push conditions on basic rights?
Yeah, because
from life to speech to voting.
Exactly, yeah. And this week, Vice Speaker Tina Rose Munga Barnes and Senator Mary Camacho Torres, a couple of Democrats there, introduced legislation that, if passed, would support pregnant women in the workplace, provide child support during pregnancy, and would remove parental rights of those who have physically or sexually abused their child or committed other crimes involving murder or manslaughter. Murder? Yeah. You take that child in the womb and you kill it, him or her or them, that's murder. Okay, we commend these senators for the policy work they've done to protect the health, safety, and well-being of children who already are living outside the womb, who already.
That's a huge red flag.
Yeah, already living outside the womb.
It's a race.
Yeah. Well, you're already now. So if you can make it to the end of the birth canal, you got rights.
Policy's for you.
Yeah, this is for you. If not, well, not so much. Okay. Safety and well-being of children who are already living outside of the womb and in dangerous, difficult environments. Not as dangerous and difficult as the one they came from, that's for sure.
You know, in New York City, Planned Parenthood is very strong there. One of the smallest populations, I guess, per capita is the African-American population in New York City. However, per capita, or per the ratio of aborted children compared to whites is aborted African Americans are higher ratio than the whites in New York City.
Yeah.
So there was a group that put up a sign, a billboard that said the most dangerous place for an African American baby is in the womb.
Absolutely.
So yeah, there are dangerous places we need to protect them from.
That's right. And we're working on creating that same danger here. And the folks who would say, no, we don't want that, and we're going to use a bill, kind of a Rube Goldberg approach to it, but I'm going to borrow a page from their book. If that Rube Goldberg mechanism, the Texas mechanism, saves just one life, it's worth it. Yeah.
That's always a threshold.
Now, this last paragraph here, this is really a doozer. It's not always easy to shy away from the sensitive abortion debate during an election year. Let me repeat that. It's not always easy to shy away from the sensitive abortion debate during an election year, but we're trying very hard to do it. We don't want to debate abortion. We want to debate children who somehow made it past the abortion stage.
I'm going to put on my Facebook fact checker role hat here and say that's been debunked. There are no election year debates or abortion legislation that happens the way that they keep promoting it.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, the last one I think was in 2008, if anything.
Right. But I get a kick out of this sentence. It's not always easy to shy away from the abortion debate. So, okay, but that's kind of saying, but we did it. We were able to accomplish it. So give us a hand there, Tall Tales. That's what they're saying. And of course they did, because instead of talking about abortion, they talked about a straw man, and they just beat the dickens out of that straw man, right? Now they go on to say, but better policies to help pregnant women and abused children outside of the womb is a commendable place to demonstrate our commitment. Now, this last three words will get you. Our commitment to all life.
Are they saying all lives matter?
That's the implication. Our commitment to all life. When they've made that sharp distinction throughout the editorial, and if you're a careful reader, you notice that they do it in their news stories every time they get a chance. They are absolutely pro-abortion at the Progressive Daily News. Now, I was a little hard on them because they didn't run my submission to their Sunday forum, and I went through the history of how the Sunday forum used to work. It didn't used to be just a platform for their own editorial bias. I had the feeling, that they really didn't make up their mind on editorial policy until they had actually sampled people in the community who had thought about it. This last time around, it's pretty clear to me that the decision was made before they even decided that would be the Sunday forum. And they did not run my letter. So I sent it over to the Post with a note. The Daily News didn't run this. Can you guys run it? I sent it on, I sent it on Tuesday and they ran it yesterday. It didn't take them long to figure that out. Well, miracle of miracles, it appeared in today's web edition of the Daily News, which means it should be in tomorrow's hard copy. Now, I'm also working on a submission to this week's Sunday Forum, but apparently the procedure has changed. If you want your submission to appear on Sunday Forum, send it to the Post first. Hope that the Post runs it, and the Daily News will be shamed into running it themselves. So here's how it appears in the Daily News. Letter, abortion, never. And then here's the text. Abortion, bottom line, up front, never. They'll flood the media with sophistry, straw man, false dilemma, faulty equivalence, et tu quoque, and appeal to authority. But no matter what logical fallacy, cheap shot, legislative legerdemain, deflection, or mischaracterization the pro-abortion gang employs, it doesn't change the answer to the fundamental question. Here's the question. When is it okay to take the life of a helpless, innocent human? So I did it in reverse order. I gave you the answer first and then the question, just like I caution against in the rules of engagement for the show. But the answer to that is never. It's never okay to take the life of a helpless, innocent human. Never. But the Daily News has their own rules. And apparently the Daily News would hold that it's okay if you say the right things about children who are being abused by their parents. Then it makes it okay, yeah. And, of course, you have to come to this conclusion. If you put yourself inside the brains, or maybe better, the soul of the folks that write editorials for the Daily News, what they're actually saying is better to kill the child in the womb than to bring that child into the world into circumstances that we don't approve of. It's better. It's a classic cost-benefit analysis. Well, that's it for the Daily News, the Progressive Daily News.
This is the incredible thing about these bills that are coming out that are pro-life, because the heartbeat bill is not pro-life; it's anti-abortion.
Absolutely.
This bill that these Democrats, Mary Torres, Tina Muna Barnes, have put together, and yes, I did say Democrats. They don't understand that there's nothing wrong with congruent laws. You don't have to pit the unborn baby against the child already out of the womb.
Exactly.
They can happen at the same time.
Exactly.
But in their minds, it's not allowable.
No. And they want to convince you that it's not allowable. It's a classic gaslighting. Why are these people talking about abortion? They're not taking care of the kids that have already been born. Yeah, they're not worthy.
So we're going to put these up here. So I'm saying keep putting these pro-life bills up because you're just giving us more reasons why the life in the womb is precious.
Exactly. Okay, now we go to the Post, and today the Post got some help from Ron McNinch, who writes a weekly column for him. And it's the title is Vote for Women and Girls. And Ron makes a certain amount of sense here. I'm going to skip the autobiographical part of his column and pick it up at the second paragraph. Last weekend, I was in Saipan, and a press release was sent out from the Department of Ed related to sports. I had assumed the school board would address the sports and gender issue this summer. I sent an email to the chair and asked the school board to hold a special meeting on this important topic. If you look at a Duke Law article comparing women to men in sports, the data is striking. Over 10,000 men in the world can run the 100-meter dash faster than the fastest woman on earth. You take the fastest woman in a 100-meter dash, and I suppose she knocks it down in probably 10.6 or 7, right? And you say, man, that's really fast. How fast do men do it? Well, I'll bring you 10,000 men that can do it faster than that. Over 13,800 men run the 800 meters faster than the fastest woman on earth. Over 8,200 males run the 1,500 meters faster than the fastest woman. Over 2,100 males can run the 5,000 meter faster than the fastest woman. Over 2,700 males can jump higher in the high jump than the best jumping woman on earth. Over 2,900 males can pole vault higher than the best female pole vaulter in the world. And over 4,800 males can jump longer than the best female long jumper in the world. So, you know, if this were all you knew about males and females, you'd probably have to say, you draw the conclusion, I think men are faster when it comes to running and stronger when it comes to throwing things than women are.
And it's not the clothes.
And it's not because of society. You know, it's not because of societal conditioning or something like that. The reality is men and women are simply different. I spent all day Sunday reading various legal cases related to this very basic question. Most of the reasoning used is hyperbole and junk. You know, I suppose that there's probably a website somewhere called hyperboleandjunk.com, and that's where the pro-abortionists and the whole transgender female gang get their facts. Hyperboleandjunk.com. Parents and relatives are going to need to stand forward and speak up for our young women and girls. We should hold every candidate in the 2022 elections accountable on the point that the rights of girls and women should be respected. If it takes a constitutional amendment to protect young girls and women, we should do that. We have a provision in the Organic Act at 1423K where our community or elected leaders can formally petition for things. As a U.S. territory, Congress can pass laws to our advantage, and this is just one of those points. Let's speak up for our young women. Yeah, well, you're close, Ron. Close enough. You didn't ring the bell, so close but no cigar. The real point here is not stick up for women, but to recognize that men and women are different, and to not invent all kinds of fictions and pretending and new vocabulary to gaslight people into thinking that men and women really aren't different. Okay, I got one more point to make on this, but I noticed I got somebody in the green room, so let me see who wants to chime in on this one. I'm going to take a short break first, and then I'll come back to Frenchie, who wants to talk about abortion.
The Federal Reserve is starting to increase interest rates to fight inflation, but they're still so low, making it the perfect time to refinance your home, to lower your rate, and perhaps take advantage of its increased value to put some cash in your pocket during these uncertain times. Cash that you can have the freedom to access when you want, where you want, with your Bank Pacific Visa debit card. Lower your rate, put cash in your pocket. Access your cash when you want, where you want, with your Visa debit card. Where let's put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
All right, the subject of the of Demi Akani, the Daily News editorial dealt with abortion, and the progressive Daily News's constant attempts to gaslight us with the straw man fallacy and others of a similar nature. We went from there to McNinch's letter in the Post. Now Frenchie's online. He wants to go back to abortion. We'll do that, and then we'll come back to McNinch. Good afternoon, Frenchie. I'm doing fine. And yourself?
Good, doing good. You know, what's amazing is the consistency of the hypocritical debates coming from the left as far back as slavery. And I'd like to take people back to antebellum, even northern and southern United States, where the main argument against anti-slavery was that black people could not be considered as full human beings. Therefore, it was okay to keep people slaves because they were not real human beings. And we see this same kind of argument over and over again in history. We saw it with the eugenics, who basically were promoting abortion and everything, especially of minorities, because minorities were not as smart as the rest of the population. And so this argument here that we have in the regressive Daily News, it's basically the same kind of argument that's been reheated and microwaved and served to us as a new hot dish. And it is not. It's the same evil type of arguments that justify, you know, when the in 1831, when there was the uprising of a few slaves in Virginia, it sent a wave of panic in the South, and what really made people in the South very worried was that the people that had revolted were actually literate blacks, who had been taught how to read and write, and could make an argument. And from there on, they made new laws to stop blacks from becoming literates. And we have the same types of argument here with abortion, where it's not really a baby, it's a cluster of cells. It's not sustainable until it's born, even though I haven't met a baby that can sustain his own life without the help of his parents. But maybe, I don't know, we'll have some great improvements down the road thanks to those enlightened people. But it's over and over and over again the same false argument. In the South, when people were arguing slavery should be ended, the people that were pro-slavery said, well, no, they are like animals. We need to just give them better shelter, better food, but they are not human enough to be not considered a slave. And this is the same kind of argument they're serving us. Well, let's take care of the children that are already born, and totally ignoring the evil that we are doing. Because we are distracted again. You know, on Monday I talk about distract, deny, and well, I might be your moment, but this is exactly what they're doing, and the regressive media is always doing this, and I'm very happy that you were calling it, and so was Jose, because this is really an immoral debate that is nothing else than old arguments that they use against slavery. They are now used to support abortion, and it is really evil. And we just need to call it what it is. It is evil philosophy that justify murder, just like they use evil philosophy to justify enslavement. And it's all after the Civil War, during the Reconstruction and everything. Then there was the separation between blacks and whites, and again the same arguments were taken. They were just a little twist here, twist over there, and it's always the same argument. Always comes from the left, and people. I'm amazed that people just don't see it for what it is, which is pure hypocrisy. And as I said before, hypocrisy is the virtue, the virtues of sin. You know, I mean, it's terrible. And so again, you know, keep on talking about this. I think a lot of people, especially young people, do need to understand that. And what I'm seeing on the national level is it's actually a lot of young women that are taking the lead against abortion. And this is a new novel thing that is very encouraging, because it means that young people are not being duped by that false narrative. Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, well, you laid it right out again for us, Frenchie. Thanks for calling in. So, yeah, you know, I'm going to mention this again when I get down to Democrats versus Republicans, but the way communication works is this, that the simple argument is usually the one that has the most traction. So you can take a simple argument that is not, you know, ridiculous on its face, but wrong, and match it against a correct argument that's complicated, and oftentimes the simple argument gets more traction. And when you're dealing with that, like we have the simple argument, a baby in the mother's womb is a person. Taking the life of an innocent, helpless person is wrong. It's immoral. It's evil. That's the simple argument. So they're stuck with the complex argument. Well, yeah, but, you know, there are a lot of kids running around that were born that aren't doing very well. What are you doing about that? Or, you know, it's really not a person until it's able to breathe outside the mother, and on and on and on and on. So we've got the simple argument, the correct argument, the moral argument, the easily understood argument. And if we're not prevailing, it's because we're just not getting it out. Because I will tell you that as a matter of politics, a credible messenger who develops a message that resonates with the people will be a successful politician unless he screws something up. So, you know, we've got the message, and we've got pretty good communicators, but I think that where we're falling down, we're just not communicating enough. And part of it is we're trying to be nice. Well, you know, I really hate abortion, but I've got several friends that are pro-choice, and I don't want to make them uncomfortable. That's kind of where a lot of our guys
Who
are.
am I to tell somebody what to do?
Yeah, we're not supposed to be judgmental, right? Yeah. Okay, so Frenchie put a nice cap on that for us. So going back to McNinch's piece here, his op-ed piece, vote for women and girls. And I know there's some late breaking news on what I've been referring to as rugby boy, but we'll get to that tomorrow. For today, taking what McNinch says, all of these numbers are that males are so much superior when it comes to athletics that there's just no comparison.
A chauvinist would say, no, that's the facts saying it.
Yeah. So, and I mentioned before we went on the break, what's our government doing about this? Who in our government speaking up for these girls? The 3 girls from Tejan High that got hurt in a rugby game because this big boy ran over the top of them and hurt him.
You would think there would be some sort of agency or government office that was there to...
Oh, the Bureau of Chamorro... No, because Chamorros can be lahi pat palawan, todo dosa.
Bob, if this was a laughing matter, I'd say, wah, 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 wah.
Yeah. Where in the world is Jane Flores? Jane, there's no abortions involved here with Rugby Boy, so I guess you're just not interested, Ms. Bureau of Women's Affairs? And you had 3 women plowed over by a boy in a rugby game. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows what's going on, and you have not said boo.
And aren't these women already outside of the womb?
They are indeed. So they're the good kind. They're not the expendable kind. So, Jane, you either need to start doing your job or quit, or perhaps have a bill introduced to the legislature to change the name of your agency. Not the Bureau of Women's Affairs, but the Bureau of Abortion Affairs. Because so far, the only thing you've really climbed onto and pursued with any vigor at all was your efforts to try to bring an abortionist to Guam. You weren't able to do that, but you and the governor were instrumental in getting the 2 OBGYNs from Honolulu to come here and get licensed so that they would have standing to bring suit on the chemical abortions matter, which they did, and they prevailed, and now they are doing chemical abortions. Congratulations, Jane. But what about the other women? What about the ones that are alive that you and your efforts hadn't had the chance to kill? Are you sticking up for them? Bureau of Women's Affairs. Yeah, I'm not going to hold my breath on that one, Jose. Okay, so, and once again, back to McNinch's point here. He's on the right track. We should treat women fairly. If they're going to play sports, they shouldn't have to compete with men because men, as he points out, are different. And the real point here is that we've got to continue to remember that men are different from women in many, many ways. And we've got to stop pretending that a man can become a woman and vice versa. And we got to stop pretending that a man can give birth or nurse a baby or any of this other stuff. And we've got to stop pretending that we have to have a society that absolutely does not recognize the difference between men and women. We have a latrine, or as in the Marine Corps, we would call it a head. And ever since I can remember, we had the men's head and the women's head. Not anymore. I was in San Diego a few years ago and went to the airport, and the graphic signals. There was a man, a silhouette of a man, a woman, and then a third one was a skirt and trousers, meaning either sex could use it. So we're pretending that there's nothing wrong with little boys going into the little girls' room in school because we don't want to embarrass somebody because of his gender preference or their gender preference.
I don't have the exact story right now, but this happened in New Jersey, where they imprisoned a trans woman amongst the women population.
Yeah.
And guess what happened?
About 3 pregnancies.
Exactly.
Yeah. Must have been parthenogenesis, right? Yeah, and right along the same lines, they're not building Navy ships with urinals anymore. Why would they need urinals? That's true.
So they're treating them like the Air Force? Everyone sits down?
Yeah, that sounds like something I'd say, Jose. Thank you very much. Okay, Ron. Well, you struck a blow, and you prompted the Board of Ed into action, and I'm just waiting for somebody to come along and stand up and say men and women are different, and we got to stop this nonsense of pretending that they're not. So it's a good start that you made there, Ron. Okay, let's take a peek at the card here and see what's on the card for today. Did I leave my card in your shop there, Jose? Can't seem to find it. Oh, here it is. I got it. Okay, the card for today. Of course, we start out with Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. And Paul will have his big day again on Monday when we play Hope Cristobal's Screen Test, co-starring Paul Zerzan. If you didn't know better, you would think that Hope was auditioning for a part in the newest film noir movie.
The Maltese colonizer.
Stop that, Jose. Yeah. And we're going to start a new feature tomorrow where we're going to make our governor, Lou Leon Guerrero, more famous than what she is. Because Jose is going to play that tape again where the governor endorses what amounts to infanticide.
Oh, yeah, babies outside of the womb.
Ouch. So we're going to make that a regular Friday feature because it's just as important as Hope's Screen Test. And we should take efforts to make sure that no one forgets it. Okay, so today it's Democrats versus Republicans again. And I'm going to spend a lot of time with that. And if there's time after that, Troy versus the Neocats. And then USA versus Vallejo Madero. But I know this matter of Democrats versus Republicans takes, there's a lot to say about it. And I'm prepared to say most of it. So we're talking about a primary election. And we're talking about the Democrats taking steps to make the election closed. So before I plunge into the who did what to whom and for what reason, I think it's necessary to talk a little bit about primary elections and perhaps even the rules of engagement for tall tales. I'll be going through the rules of engagement on, is it Monday? Yeah, the first day of every month I go through the rules of engagement. And tailgaters know that on Tall Tales, we don't allow filibusters. We don't allow soapboxing. We don't allow anybody to play pin the tail on the talk show host. And I've got to add a new rule. We're not going to allow cumulative testimony on Tall Tales. And this is what I mean by that. If you have a point to make and you make your point, saying the same thing over again does not give your argument more force. The only thing it tends to do is to be boring. So make your point, and if I make a counterpoint, then good talk radio would suggest that you address the counterpoint. And if you have a counter to the counterpoint, fine. But if you make a point and I have my own 2 cents worth and you just come back and keep repeating where you started, it tends to be boring. And the greatest enemy of the talk show is boring. It's got to be good talk radio, or I'm not going to have a whole lot of patience for it. My bad, I suppose. So when it comes to primary elections, you know, I had a caller who said, well, you know, let's face it, primary elections are just about the parties. So if they're just about the parties should pay for it. And I don't know how many times I've been through this, and I keep hearing it over and over again. It's a classic example of conventional wisdom, again, that I touch on in my rules of engagement. Conventional wisdom like the earth is flat, objects that are heavier than air could never fly, iron ships can't float, etc. There's no way that the parties could pay for a primary election. And if you think that that's happened somewhere, then what you need to do is show me that there was a primary election as we understand the term, and a bill was sent to a political party which was paid. That's not going to happen. So when it comes to this point, you know, the primary election is just for the parties. So is the general election. Because the general election lists candidates by their party. There's a Democrat side of the ballot. There's a Republican side of the ballot. There's nothing that would require that if there weren't political parties. And the way our system works is probably pretty similar to the rest of the states. If you want your party's candidates to appear on the ballot under that party label, you must perfect your existence as a political party. It's in the code, it's in Title III. What you must do to be recognized as a political party is filling out forms and signing papers, et cetera, and sending that in. And if those who would organize a party do that, then the party's label will be on the ballot. And if they comply with other laws, in our case, the primary law, their candidates will be listed under that party label in the general election. Now, let's just examine that for a second. Let's suppose that we were living here and we didn't have any political parties. Nobody submitted the papers to have a party recognized. Could we still have a general election? You better Hong Kong believe it. Who would be on the ballot? Anybody who went out and got enough signatures, et cetera, would go on the ballot without any party affiliation whatsoever. So, you know, picking up on that, the earth is flat. If the primary is for the parties, then so is the general, because the way the general ballot is set up, candidates are grouped by party. Okay, let's take a short break and I'll come back to primary elections in general.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarty Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
So we have to have elections. We all know that. As far as our situation is concerned, the Organic Act requires it. In the states, state constitutions require elections. Nationally, our Constitution requires elections. So we have to have elections, but there doesn't have to be a party designation on the ballots for those elections. When the framers were putting together the United States Constitution, obviously they didn't pay much attention to the idea of political parties. Now, in the beginning, there were sort of political parties. There were the Anti-Federalists. And the Anti-Federalists were the guy who would really, if there were any of them around, they'd really appreciate my referring to the gang in Washington as the national government, because that's what they were against. They were against a too powerful central government.
Like a confederacy.
Exactly. And then you had the Whigs, which had some elements of the progressives, internal improvements, things like that, and a strong central government. That was Alexander Hamilton and guys like that. But they really didn't make any provision in the Constitution for political parties. We kind of made that up as we went along. And I would submit that it is a natural evolution of popular elections. That when it comes to elections, for almost anything, people are going to tend to group themselves with others who have the same idea of what the organization should do or should not do, because in numbers there is strength. So that's exactly what happened in the United States. We really got into parties when the corrupt bargain between Henry Clay and John Quincy Adams euchred Andrew Jackson out of the presidency. And because of that, Jackson actually started the Democrat Party. And as the saying goes, the rest is history. So the United States has been partisan at least since that time. So we have ballots that designate candidates by party. And in order to be on that ballot, a political party has to jump through hoops and perfect its existence as a party. And in our jurisdiction, not every jurisdiction, some jurisdictions don't have primaries. We didn't have them here until 1970. So each party had its convention. And the convention would come up with its slate of candidates, submit it to the election commission. And back in those days, it was the chief commissioner. And he would arraign the 21 candidates for each party on the ballot under that party's label. Interesting footnote, back in those days, not only did the ballot contain the names of the 21 candidates for each of the parties, there was also the device known as the blackjack. So there was a square at the top of the column of the party. If you just marked that square, it meant you voted for all 21 of the candidates. And a good Democrat, blackjack. Come on, you guys, remember, mga malefonino no anay ginimagi gi eleksyon, pot for bot na blackjack.
Did we win anything really, though?
Yeah, well, you won. The Democrats won the elections up until the 8th Guam legislature. The territorials took over and did away with the blackjack, to their credit. But that's why. So that was one way of choosing candidates. And you know, in the national scene in Iowa, they have party caucuses. And other states have party caucuses that are so complicated that I don't think anybody really understands how they work. Some states have party conventions like we had here. In my lifetime, presidential candidates were actually chosen in the party convention. Yeah.
Primaries, huh?
No, the primary has made the national convention just a sort of a media circus.
Big party.
Yeah, big party. A lot of fun, but no real actual function. In 1948, as an example, you had the Democrats, the Republicans, and the Dixiecrats, led by Strom Thurmond.
Oh, the most beloved no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Strom Thurmond, you know, and the states of the former Confederacy in Kentucky and Missouri, you know, were very strong in the Dixiecrat Party. that seceded from the Democrat Party because of the Democrats Party's stand on civil rights. They don't need no stinking civil rights. So anyhow, the National Convention used to have a real function. It's been replaced by the parties. Now, I've talked about this so many times, but apparently I'm not getting through. We've only had the secret ballot in the United States since about the turn of the last century. Before that, the voter went to the polls and he just told the clerk who he was voting for.
Sounds legit.
made political patronage a whole lot easier, didn't it? And made it a lot easier for the big city bosses, the guys like Boss Tweed, to take control of whole cities and hang on to them for years and years and years, dispensing the appropriate amount of patronage to their supporters. So we went with a secret ballot, and this was quite an improvement. But the progressives, this is when the word progressive meant something a little different from nowadays. The progressives came along and said, we really don't have a say in the elections because we get to vote for the candidates, but the political bosses get to choose the candidates. So maybe there are 4 offices that we can vote for. Every one of the candidates for those 4 offices is handpicked by a political boss. I'll come back to this right after the big halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Investigating alleged war crimes, I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The International Criminal Court is joining in the investigation of atrocities reportedly carried out by Russian invaders in Ukraine. Its chief prosecutor, Karim Khan, saying,
"This is not really a time for talking, it's a time for action. International law cannot be a passive spectator. It can't be sedentary. It needs to move with alacrity to protect and to insist on accountability."
Ukraine says it has been documenting hundreds of cases of brutality against Ukrainian citizens. A crackdown on protests reported in a Russian-held Ukrainian city.
In the southern city of Kherson, new claims of a Russian crackdown on dissent. Residents have been protesting there. Ukraine says Russian troops used tear gas and stun. The first major city to fall when the war began, and Russia has been seeking to tighten its control.
Fox's Matt Finn in Western Ukraine. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres continuing his personal diplomacy today to meet with Ukraine's President Zelensky. The White House revealing President Biden is headed for Asia next month. Meetings with Japan and South Korea to discuss threats in the Indo-Pacific region from North Korea and China. It was a premeditated sexual assault. Sunday's murder of 10-year-old Lily Peters in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, according to District Attorney Wade Newell, who says the suspect is a 14-year-old boy.
The state is requesting a $1 million cash bond with the condition that he have no contact with any juveniles and not possess any dangerous weapons.
The teenager will be tried in adult court on murder and sexual assault charges. 3 people were shot to death in Biloxi, Mississippi Wednesday, a 4th killed in an attempted carjacking. Police say the gunman then holed up in a convenience store in Gulfport, where Police Chief Adam Cooper says.
"We attempted several times to make contact. There was never any response from inside. Once he ran into the store, they heard some noises from inside, but he never spoke to us."
Police later found the suspect dead. America, listening to Fox News.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing the point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
The Federal Reserve is starting to increase interest rates to fight inflation, but they're still so low, making it the perfect time to refinance your home, to lower your rate, and perhaps take advantage of its increased value to put some cash in your pocket during these uncertain times. Cash that you can have the freedom to access when you want, where you want with your Bank Pacific Visa debit card. Lower your rate with cash in your pocket. Access your cash when you want, where you want with your Visa debit card. For those good branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply.
2 airmen accused of stealing ammunition from the Air Force.
John Sanger and Eric Eagleton, who are stationed at Fairchild Air Force Base near Spokane, face charges of conspiracy to commit theft of government property and possession of stolen ammunition, which can carry up to a 5-year prison sentence. A joint terrorism task force began investigating Sanger after linking him with a pair of social media accounts that made anti-government statements in the months between the 2020 election and the January 6th Capitol riot. Last month, Sanger and Eagleton met with an undercover agent and went target shooting, where the agent recorded Eagleton saying that members of the Combat Arms Management Training Section routinely steal ammunition, and he also discussed his anti-Semitic views. Lisa Lacera, Fox News.
President Biden has reportedly told the Congressional Hispanic Caucus he will further extend a moratorium on student loan payments and forgive millions more in debts. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki not confirming that report.
The president has been considering and looking at options for how to provide more relief to students across the country. I would note again that not a single borrower of federal student loans has paid a penny on these loans since he took office.
The soon-to-be new owner of Twitter admitting he's got competition.
Elon Musk taking to Twitter to point out former President Trump's social media platform. Truth Social is currently beating Twitter and TikTok on the Apple Store, sharing a screenshot of free app download rankings on Apple's App Store. App analytics firm Sensor Tower estimates Truth Social, a Twitter alternative, has reached 1.4 million installs, up from 1.2 million in March. Musk's post follows the Tesla and SpaceX CEO striking a deal to buy Twitter for roughly $44 billion, saying he wants to strengthen the company's position on free speech. Kristen Goodwin, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Half a day. My name is Joan Kinata from the village of Umate. I've applied for the program as Salapi to help me in my daily commute from Umate to Manila. Thank you to this administration for the program Salapi.
The application deadline for Program Salapi has been extended to May 22nd, 2022. For more information, please visit doa.guam.gov. This ad was paid for by the Office of the Governor using government funds.
Half a day. Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns the property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has a management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarty Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Biggs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
So because I'm going back again to primary elections, and so because our Organic Act requires us to have elections, and because local law allows the identification of candidates under a party label, provided that the party has perfected its existence with the election commission. There has to be a mechanism for the party to choose its candidates. Up until 1970, we did not have primaries. It was done in convention. Since 1970, we do have primaries. So to say, well, they should make the parties pay for the primary, it's just wrong. And I'd like to be a little more diplomatic about it, but it's just plain wrong. Now, if we had a situation where our statute did not require a victory in a primary or a showing in a primary election to get to the general election ballot, which we did before 1970, then the parties could choose their candidates just about any way they wanted to. They could do the same. The Democrats could do the same thing they do with their party elections. They hold actual island-wide elections in various schools, et cetera, around the island. They, ballot boxes and ballots and the whole thing. Or we could go the convention route or the smoke-filled room route. And, of course, that was the reason, the smoke-filled room was the reason that we went to the partisan primary. And I don't want to go back to that. As I've mentioned this before, if we didn't have primary elections here, I don't think I would have been elected in 2002 or 2004. If the party had chosen the candidates, I don't think they would have wanted to choose me because uncontrollable. A couple of times during the time I was a senator in the 27th, I went with the Democrats to override a Republican governor's veto. Bad, bad, bad. Anybody who does that is not going to get the party endorsement. So had it been up to the party bosses, perhaps they wouldn't have chosen me to be one of their candidates. Primary election, yeah, I did okay. I think I did better in the general than I did in the primary. I think it was number 10 in the general, and like number 11 in the primary, or number 9 in the primary. That kind of tells you something right there. So I'm all in favor of the primary election. Now, Ishmael chimes in and says, let's see here. Where did he say that? Cancel primaries. Registered party members can only vote for the party's candidates. Yeah, that's not it. I can't find it right now, but what he said was cancel the primaries or don't have partisan primaries. Just let everybody go. Let everybody be on the ballot, and the top 30 people in the primary advance to the general, and then we'll sort it out there. Well, that is the classic example of the blanket primary, which the United States Supreme Court in California Democrat Party versus Jones, said was unconstitutional based on First Amendment grounds. So we can't do that. So if we had a free hand with the law, what we could do is we could have a primary or we could have no primary. Or if we really wanted to be extreme, take the partisan labels off the ballot. Just let everybody run who perfects his candidates, files the papers, gets the signatures, etc. Any one of those things would result in chaos. Our elections are chaotic enough as it is, but because people run under party banners, there is a little coherence. You have some idea of what candidates believe in and what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. But if we didn't have that party structure, I shudder to think of what would happen. Certainly, the candidates that wanted to spend the most money would have a huge advantage because it would be all about name recognition, etc. So that would not be my idea of the way we ought to run our elections. I'm all in favor of primaries. Now, when it comes to primaries, we could have a closed primary or an open primary. We've had an open primary up until this time. The Democrats are taking us towards a closed primary. A closed primary means that you have to be a member of the party for which ballot you're going to vote. And I mentioned this yesterday. In some states, you got to be a member of the party for a durational period before the election. You got to be signed up as a Democrat for 60 days before the primary before you get the Democrat ballot. If you're not, you don't get the Democrat ballot. And a closed primary, the only ballots available are Democrat and Republican, unless there are independent candidates, which ordinarily there aren't. The brutal reality is this: if a candidate can't get the support of one of the major parties, he probably isn't going to get the support of the electorate as an independent. It just doesn't work that way. So we could do that. We could we could have 200 people on the general election ballot, and we probably would. As McNench will tell you that, that there's such a thing as the vanity candidate, someone who goes through jumps through all of the hoops, gets his name on the ballot just so he has some bragging rights. I ran for senator back in 2022. I didn't have a chance in hell to making it, but by gosh, I ran. So if we didn't have partisan primaries, it would be chaotic. I favor the closed partisan primary. If I could write the laws, I can. Sometimes I can even get people to pay attention to it. I'd never get Tello on my side. I would only anger her by putting her name on it, right? But the law ought to say that only people who are registered as members of a party with the Election Commission for 30 or more days before the election can vote in that election. And if you're not registered in either party, stay home and enjoy yourself. That's the way the primary is supposed to function. Now, the way it works out in reality, when you have an open primary, you have to deal with the phenomenon known as rating. And this is a classic example. This time around is a classic example where rating, it looks very attractive to Republicans, because a Republican looks at his candidates, and ordinarily Republicans have a hard time getting 15 candidates for the primary. So there's no winnowing there. There's no race in the Republicans as far as Washington rep. We're going to send James Moylan to Washington to write letters home to us. That's our idea. And of course, it's Felix for the governorship. Now, there may be contested races in some of the villages for mayor, but that's pretty small beer when you come right down to it. So there really isn't much action on the Republican side. So smart Republicans, clever Republicans, conniving Republicans, Democrats out there saying, Bob, stop the redundancy. Yeah, are going to say, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go over and vote in the Democrat primary. And I mentioned this the other day. I think there are several different approaches that the rater could use. The easiest to understand is the rater who is able. Who are you going to vote for in that Democrat primary? Anybody but Lou Abel. Okay, I guess that's Michael. I would rather have Michael San Nicolas. I'd rather have Michael San Nicolas's third cousin than have to put up with 4 more years of the Red Queen, that Abel voter said. So that's one possibility. Another possibility is that the handicapper looks at the 2 candidates and said, which one would Felix have a better chance of beating? And he figures that out and then goes and votes for the other candidate in the other side's primary. Vote for the weakest candidate for the office. This happens. Now, the degree that is governed by sub rosa conspiracies is something that we could only resolves in conjecture. But I know for sure it happens. And, of course, that's what the Democrats are afraid of, is rating. So in an ideal world, and Ray mentioned this morning, we would go to a closed primary, but we would do it right after the next election so that it doesn't look like one side or the other trying to get some kind of a partisan political advantage by changing the rules of the game when we're already into the third quarter of the game, which is where we are right now.
And I believe that's where the focus ought to be for those who want to criticize the Democrat Party.
Yeah.
Because to my mindset, I'm a voter from the United States. I didn't register to vote here on Guam until 2007.
Uh-huh.
And when I moved here, and when I did that, I just checked my voter registration online, and apparently I left it blank.
Uh-huh.
And I was a registered Republican in the States. Democrat at first, changed it to Republican after, I think, the Clinton administration.
After you wised up.
After I wised up. And then now I think I left it blank, which is interesting because I observed after doing that, not before, but afterwards, that parties almost didn't seem to matter too much as the individual goes, because they weren't really strong in some of the there's a lot of fiscal-minded conservative Democrats. B.J. Cruz is one of them.
Sure.
And so here on Guam, the tradition, it seems like, because of the statistics show that people don't put an affiliation, that people don't do that because there is no real true benefit for doing it. It's just an aside. Now there's a benefit to it with a closed primary. But it got sprung up on people who probably usually vote for Democrat, but didn't put an affiliation on their registration form.
Yeah. So if we had a closed primary, I say it as being good for everybody. Number one, the party officials would have to get off their butts and actually do some work. Try to get out and register people and register as members of your party. Two, do a lot of soul searching to see what the party stands for. And have sharp policy differences between the parties. We've got, every Republican has come out as being anti-abortion. And we've got 3 Democrats that have coming out being anti-abortion. How they survive over there, I don't know, because I understand the rule is you've got to be pro-abortion if you're going to be a Democrat. So I think that the system would work a lot better if we had closed primaries and the parties actually adopted principles by which they were going to live. That's what I'd like to see. I don't want to see a blanket primary, even if it were constitutional. It's the other name for the blanket primary is the jungle primary. And that's what we would have.
Jungle rules.
Yeah, and that's what we would have if the party labels didn't appear on the general election ballot. Okay, so let me get into some of the articles that I have here for today. The Daily News. Let me see here. Where am I? I've got the papers right here. Fortunately, I didn't bring the articles down. Headlines in the Post. Democratic races in the hands of 2,500 registered voters so far. Only 2,500 people, when they registered to vote, marked that box, Democrat. And Daily News headline, Democratic primary closed to non-members. Leadership of the Democratic Party, you know about that already. Commission Director Maria Pangilinan said only about 4,000 of the island's registered voters are affiliated with any political party. That's less than 10% of the roughly 50,000 people registered to vote. Guam's primaries are normally open, meaning that voters of any party can vote in either the Republican or Democrat primary elections. Democrat Party Chair Tony Babauta, the one-time chief of staff for Governor Leon Guerrero, said Wednesday that the party will make a strong push to get voters informed of the changes and to get more Democrats registered. Now, I got to stop here. And I got to express a very strong bias or prejudice. You know, if Tony Babauta told me that $1 was worth 100 cents, I'd get out my calculator and add it up. This is the same Tony Babauta who was an assistant secretary of the Interior, and he left Washington in disgrace, disgracing not only himself but us. The thinking, I suspect, in Washington being, if Guam sends people to Washington, they're going to send us their very best. Man, if this guy Babauta is the very best, I'd certainly hate to see the marginal performers out there. So he comes back and he's the governor's chief of staff. He next distinguishes himself, guess where, Jose? The 19th floor. When the horror story of the 19th floor is written, maybe the lady that wrote Harry Potter, what's her name? Rowley?
Rollins, Kate, something Rollins.
Yeah. When she writes the story of the 19th floor, it'll be kind of like Harry Potter. There will be several chapters in there about the executive suite and Tony Babauta on the 19th floor. So he did such a great job on the 19th floor. The next day he quit. Perhaps decided he wanted to go into the hotel business or something like that. Yeah, and then, of course, the Democrats have a real way of picking talent, right? So you'd have figured that this guy's political career is probably at an end. He screwed up in Washington. He comes back here. He's the chief of staff. He screws up. No, they make him the party chairman. And I suspect that this whole thing is his idea. This whole partisan primary thing is his idea. He said closing the primary was meant to preserve the meaning and fullness of a vote from a registered Democrat and not having that vote diluted by the casting of any other vote that comes from outside the party. In other words, from Raiders. He said specific candidates in this year's race were not discussed prior to the vote. I'll bet. Former Governor Felix Camacho is so far the only Republican gubernatorial candidate, along with running mate Tony Atta. The local Republican Party wants to unite behind Camacho and Atta, and if no other team enters the race, they will be unopposed. Let's see here. Delegate San Nicolas denounced the closing of the Democrat Party in a statement made hours after the decision. The attempts by the Democratic Party leadership and the Central Executive Committee, made up of Lou and Josh supporters and employees, to cut off voters who don't register as Democrats from voting in the Democrat Party election is a simple attempt to force people to get partisan rather than to vote for what they feel is best for Guam. Running mate Matanani added the team was ready to make a run under an independent ticket. Now, I'll pick that up a little later on and tell you why, by doing that, they're doing a tremendous favor for Felix Camacho. The Post, Democrat races in the hands of 2,500 registered voters so far. Yeah, and here we go again. Yeah, this is why I wanted to read this article. Higher threshold to run as an independent. San Nicolas and Matanani are weighing the possibility of running as independent candidates, which means they have to meet a higher threshold to go beyond the primaries. They got to get 20%, amount equal to 20% of the votes. I know that. Apparently the Post doesn't, because they didn't put it in their article. And then they really show their behinds here. On Guam, the political primaries are paid by taxpayers' money and not by the respective parties. Wrong, 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 dumb, dumb, dumb. I guess whoever wrote this story doesn't listen to tall tales. Previous legislative attempts to make it the responsibilities of the parties didn't succeed. Now, I'm not going to rely on my sometimes faulty memory here too heavily. I don't ever remember anyone introducing such a bill, because even our senators are not that stupid. But it's one of those, everybody knows it's for the parties. And, by gosh, if that's how they're going to choose their candidates, they should pay for it. Yeah, common sense just tells you if you're going to play, you got to pay. So, all very interesting. Now, Troy, of course, does the most thorough job of anybody on reporting this whole deal here. Let's see here. Where is Troy? I'm going to have to look this up on the net. For some reason, I guess I forgot some of my papers today. Oh, yeah. Wait a second here. Yeah, okay. I found the rest of my papers just in time to head for Wrigley Field for the 7th inning stretch.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY. The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guam Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Okay, so here we are again, dealing with the election. And you'll recall that the other day I read the resolution adopted by the Democrat Party, Section 15. Unless the GEC votes otherwise, only registered Democrats with the Democrat Party may vote in the Democrat primary. A vote to open the Democrat primary to non-affiliated voters must occur at a GEC meeting held before the deadline stipulated in the civil case and the procedures and guidelines set forth by the Election Commission to implement the ruling contained in the civil case CV 1456-03. Now, keep that in mind as I tell you what Candid reported on. Under the heading, is a closed primary election even possible? Here's some real reporting, not just copying and pasting a press release.
That's what I was looking for in the other ones. Where are these dates?
Yeah. Maria Pangolin and the GEC chief, and by the way, I got to stop here and make a comment here. Maria Pangolin is so much better than anyone else who's ever had that job. If every director in the government of Guam were as good as Maria Pangilinan, we'd be living in a governmental paradise. She's really got it together. And I can't think of anyone who is better able to deal with this situation than Maria. Anyhow, confirmed that in order for her staff to conduct this closed primary election, the GEC will need to promulgate rules through the administrative adjudication law. Yeah. You remember how that works? Promulgate rules, public hearings at the agency, a fiscal note from the Bureau of Budget and Management Research. After the agency has it the way it thinks it should be, it sends it to the legislature. 90 days later, if the legislature leaves it alone, the rules are effective. The legislature can, by law, reject or pass those rules. It's a long, drawn-out, tedious process. The GEC will need to promulgate rules through the Administrative Adjudication Act process for the proper implementation of the election. It will take at least 6 months for such process to be finished. I think the primary is going to come, As of today, there are only 121 days to the primary election. 30 days and a month. Let's be about 4 months, right? Yeah. The biggest deadline for us is July 13th, Pangilinan added. That's the last day, 45 days before the primary, for us to send out the UCAVA, Uniform and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act, ballots. They have to be done and mailed by July 13th, servicemen. But there's more. Early voting starts on July 28, she said, and before that, June 28 is also the deadline for candidates to file their packets. We have to vet the packets if they are filed last minute. Then we collect all those that have submitted all the requirements. Then as the board has to ratify the candidates, and then the ballot placement is drawn. There are only 52 days to June 28. Asked whether a change in the process is even possible, Pangilinan said, we have to do what we can inside the law. And to be sure, there are several laws at play here, to include the 2003 ruling by presiding Judge La Morena, which the Democrat Party bosses Tuesday night used to predicate their sudden move. So let me analyze here what's going on. Okay, Tony Babauta went to the rifle range. He had a brand new 30-30, right? But he was never able to hit even with a scope sight. But he was never able to hit the target. And somebody said, Tony, you can never hit the target. What method do you use? And he said, I use the standard old ready, fire, aim method. And that's exactly what they must have done here. Ready, fire, aim, without doing their homework. Somebody had a good idea. Yeah, let's do that. Let's keep the Republicans from crossing over and voting for Mike. Yeah, how do we do that? Well, you know, Judge La Morena and Maria always sends us this letter. That's how we can do that. Hey, great idea. Is there anything else we need to do? No, just a couple of press releases, that's it. And look at the hole that they've backed themselves into. Just a huge hole. Okay, I've got more on this, but once again, I like to hear from the folks as we go along on this issue. Let me see who I got here. This is Kellis on logistics of a closed primary. Hello, Kellis.
Hey, Judge. So my thought, I think this is another reason I think it's a great idea. Think of how much money we will save by only printing 2,500 ballots.
Yeah, that's right. If we only got 2,500 Democrats, for sure.
Yeah.
Good point, Kellis.
So if you just look at it that way, they get to choose. So I mean, that's a lot of money that we could save.
Good point,
And if we
Kellis.
do this also for the Republicans, then you're only printing 4,000 ballots total.
Well, the Republicans haven't asked for a closed primary.
I know, but I'm just saying, if we do it, think how much money we could save.
Oh, if in the future. Yeah, I got you. Good point. Good point.
That's what I was thinking about.
Okay, good call, Kellis. Thank you.
Okay, Judge. Have a good day.
And then we've got another Leon Guerrero here. We've got Ken. Afternoon, Ken.
I'm doing fine. You know, I was just catching your comment there about the Democrat Lou's fears that the Democrats were going to flood and vote for Mike. That doesn't make sense, because if anecdotal information, I'm sure the polls show that Mike would win easily, you would think that they would be flooding over and voting for Lou. Lou should have been encouraging them to come over and vote for her, in an effort to knock Mike out. Because in the eyes of the polls and in the anecdotal information, she's looking right now like the weaker candidate. So it didn't make sense to me when I first heard that, oh no, they're doing this to prevent Republicans from voting for Mike.
Well, there's part of being a politician is a healthy dose of paranoia. And the average politician would say, yeah, I wouldn't be so paranoid if there weren't so many people out to get me.
Yeah, there wouldn't be so many people out to get them if they would only do something for the benefit of the people once in a while.
True enough. Okay, well, interesting analysis. Thanks, Ken.
All right, talk to you later, Judge.
All right, and I got Ron McNinch, who wants to talk about primaries instead of the Bureau of Women's Affairs. Ron, are you satisfied with the performance of the Bureau of Women's Affairs?
How about they, Senator? How about they go? I don't even know what they do, Senator, to be honest. I hate to say that, but I don't even know what their actual purpose or goal is.
They, being Jane Flores, beat the bushes to try to find an abortionist to come to Guam. Couldn't. Along with a couple others, got the two OBGYNs from Honolulu to come over here and get licensed on Guam so they'd have standing to bring suit on the chemical abortion matter, which they did. They won, and now we have chemical abortions available from them here on the island, and Jane can take a lot of the credit for that. Looking out for women.
Oh, okay. I wasn't really that familiar with those things. Hey, on the primary thing, I was just going to mention really quickly, one thing that might be a simple solution is just make it a nonpartisan primary, and that way you remove the bar that exists, to keep the column in the partisan. You can still list what party they are, but make the selection be, the top two proceed, or if it's the governor's race or whatever. There's just another way to do it.
I think that's California Democrat Party versus Jones. That's what started all of this, Ron.
Right, but when they removed the primary, the problem in California was the crossover issue, and that's where you ended up seeing that's when the blanket was thrown out. But that's a blanket partisan primary. What I would suggest is just make the primary nonpartisan.
Okay.
And do what's called qualifying primary.
All right, I see what you're saying. I would hate to see that, but I understand what you're saying.
Right, and I do agree that there should be a lot of discussion and thoughtful deliberation when these kinds of moves are made, and I think that they probably could have worked this particular point out a lot better than they did. But anyway, that's just the normal. That's just how it always is, I think, with these parties here. I really don't. I agree with your point earlier. The political parties really on Guam do not tend to have an ideological basis. Really, they're more centered around personalities than they are about issues and or national party lines, which I would prefer myself. I'd like it if both political parties followed more of their national relations. But anyway, yeah.
Okay, Ron, so you don't want to comment on the Bureau of Women. You're pleading ignorance on the Bureau of Women's Affairs, huh?
Well, I do believe that women should be respected, and I've spoken up, and I have basically commented that I believe that the Board of Education should fully discuss the issue about who can participate in women's sports here, and it should be a thoughtful discussion, and we should have a community input and consensus on it. And I think we're going to have that. I think that everyone is gearing up now to certainly, have their voice. And I think that there are many parents who are keenly concerned about this issue.
I'm not going to swear you in, but I'm going to cross-examine you a little bit, okay, Ron?
Yeah.
Do you think that there is a difference between boys and girls?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you think that there's anything wrong with recognizing that boys and girls are different?
No, not at all. In fact, we should celebrate our differences. That's what diversity is supposed to do. And these particular views some people have are actually, they oppose the diversity of men and women rather than support the concept that we have diversity.
Well, it's very Orwellian. You control the way people think by controlling the words they use, and that's the next part of my cross-examination. If you understand that a man and a woman are different, is it necessary to put a label in front of either of those words to fully understand what you're talking about?
No, it should be a clear dichotomous.
So a man is a man is a man. You don't have to say, well, he's a man, or he's a cisgender man, or he's a transgender man. And this is exactly, the cultural Marxism approach to changing people's thought process, changing the words that they use to construct their thoughts by changing the language that they use. And this whole rugby boy thing, I've harped on it quite a bit. The whole rugby boy thing just needs to be resolved on the basis that girls have a rugby team, a rugby league. Boys don't play in girls' leagues. And that's it. There's nothing else you need to say. But everybody gets so involved in saying the politically correct things or not saying anything at all, and it's gotten out of control.
No, I agree that, we expend a lot of, in the United States, we expend a lot of policy energy on this kind of nonsense. And to me, that's what it is. But, that's just my opinion, that these particular kinds of questions in the policy realm are simply, other countries kind of laugh at us for having these kinds of views that we have sometimes. These really, one of my friends was talking to me about pronouns and what's the proper pronoun to use. And I kind of said, well, I'd like to use THX 3000 as my pronoun from now on and move on. Just because I mock it, because in general, it's a kind of, when people bring up the pronoun thing and they spring it in common conversation, what they're doing is they're trying to assert that they're better than you.
Yep.
And it does not help, the LGBTQ plus community when they have people making these kinds of arguments. It makes a lot of folks look bad, and it's unfortunate that's what the priority is. There are far more crucial things for us to spend our time on than those kinds of things.
I have a very politically incorrect pronouns that I proffer when people ask me that question. It's 2 words. The last word is you, and the first word begins with F. But I can't say the rest of it on the radio. That's my pronouns. Okay, good talking to you, Ron. I got to go to Churchill Downs. Thanks. Let's head to Churchill Downs, Jose.
The Federal Reserve is starting to increase interest rates to fight inflation, but they're still so low, making it the perfect time to refinance your home, to lower your rate, and perhaps take advantage of its increased value to put some cash in your pocket during these uncertain times. Cash that you can have the freedom to access when you want, where you want, with your Bank Pacific Visa debit card. Lower your rate with cash in your pocket. Access your cash when you want, where you want, with your Visa debit card. Where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Yeah. How did you do that?
I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, okay. Well, here I am. I didn't go anywhere. I was sitting here jabbering. You just couldn't hear me, folks. So I got R. Keith who wants to weigh in here. Go ahead, R. Keith.
Hi, Bob. I'm gonna make this a little G-rated or PG-rated. I saw a funny little quote online about this pronoun silliness. A guy was saying, you know, all my life I've been called a jackass or a blank hole, and I had been insulted. As it turns out, they're just my pronouns.
That's great. Very good. Thanks, R. Keith.
End on a chuckle. Have a good day.
Thanks for calling, R. Keith. Yeah, R. Keith is always, he's kind of like a punctuation mark. Doesn't take up a whole lot of space, but it really makes things make sensible, right? Yeah, okay, so I'll put my own pronouns aside for a moment. Going back to what happened here with our elections and the Democrat Party and the political genius, the political savant, Tony Babauta. I wish I could do memes because I've got a dynamite meme here, okay? And I've got to tell you a little story. Tony Babauta, the lumberjack, right? And there's a tree in Tony's yard, and there's a branch on that tree that he doesn't like because it's too close to his house and it brushes against the house and everything like that. And he figures I'd be a whole lot better if that branch weren't there. I'm going to saw it off. So he gets his saw and he climbs the tree and he gets up and he's sitting on that limb and he's sawing away. He's sawing away his, boy, this is going to really work out well. And just before he saws through the limb, he realizes he's sitting on the outboard side of the limb. He's sawing off the limb that he's sitting on. And I think that's exactly what he did here. I think my analysis now is, after reading what Maria said, this was an extremely impulsive, spur-of-the-moment type of thing, the kind of thing that people like Tony Babauta make their bones on. You know, Tony really knows politics, and he knows how to do the. Tony, what should we do? Well, we'll close the primary and keep those Republicans from crossing over. Hey, great idea, Tony. How do we do that? Well, we got this letter from Maria. I got some language here to change our bylaws. That's all we got to do. So he does it. But, and then I read that crazy thing in their resolution where they kind of say, we're going to change this one of these days, but, you know, kind of tipping their hats. But my latest theorization is that when what Maria told them finally sinks in, that they really can't get to where they want to go from where they are, Tony will blame it on the Election Commission and Maria Pangilinan. We wanted to have a closed primary. We didn't want Republicans coming over and we can't because the Election Commission, Maria Pangilinan won't let us do it.
Who's responsible for the big hole they left, though, where people can go and change their affiliation up until August?
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so that's my analysis there. I got Harvey Egna on the line. He wants to talk about the primary. All right. Good afternoon, Harvey.
Hey, thanks for taking my call, Bob. Boy, I have to say, thank God I'm a Republican this time. You know, a little bit of historical perspective. I recall primary politics back in the day of my grandparents, and it seemed back then that everybody was either a Republican or Democrat. If you were an independent, you were a bit of an oddball or a member of an unusual third party, like a socialist or something. And when it was primary day, you trotted down to the poll, and if you were a Democrat, you were handed the Democrat card, and Republican, you were handed the Republican card. And if you were an independent, you stayed home. And by the time of my parents, that started to change a bit. And now we're in a situation where everything is reversed. We're here in Guam, out of our 50,000 voters, I recall them saying about 5,000 are split between registered in both parties. So the vast majority are independents. So it seems like we're just hearkening back to, back to the good old days when people, in fact, were registered and voted along party lines, except that most people nowadays are not registered. And the Dems are using that, that legacy to help them in their current situation.
Yeah, well, true enough, but I see this as just a gigantic bungle on the part of Tony Babauta.
Yeah, and then, if they do have 2,500 registered voters, and we look at our typical turnout, let's say half of them turn out for the primary, they're going to be driving their candidate slate based on about a 1,200 voter turnout for the primary.
Yeah, the whole thing doesn't make a whole lot of sense, does it, Harvey?
No, it doesn't. I learned this morning from a different show that the incumbent governor's husband was not even registered as a Democrat. I'm wondering if that changed during the day. I'll have to check it out tomorrow.
Maybe he's trying to pass.
It could be, but under their rules, he wouldn't be able to vote for his wife.
That's right. True enough.
I appreciate you taking my call, sir.
Okay, Harvey. Nice talking to you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. And let's see, I've got somebody else coming up here in the green room. Repeat. Yeah. Nobody's hey, I'm wondering, Repeat is really kind of late, where it's 6 minutes to the end of the show and nobody's beaten up on Mike San Nicolas yet. Yeah, no wonder you had to call Repeat.
Yeah, no, I just got out of hearing. So anyways, this is turning out to be gold for Mike, I guess. But I do want to say that, someone didn't walk the dog on this one. That's an old boss of mine used to always use that expression. Did you walk the dog on this and see, what the second, third, and fourth order effects were? And if you didn't, then he said, then you screwed the pooch, right? So it looks like somebody screwed the pooch. But that being said, though, there was always, we were taught, you never say no, right? You find a way to get to yes. So I guess people have to come up with some creative and legal solutions to get to yes. I was always taught that there's a way to get to yes. You just got to figure it out. Well, so let's see what happens.
You heard
unscrew the pooch.
You heard that my analysis is that Tony Babauta is going to try to blame it on the Election Commission. There's another rule that comes into play here that you may be familiar with, Repeat. It's called the Purcell rule.
Right.
It came out of a Supreme Court case where one of the parties was named Purcell, and the Supreme Court laid down this general rule: you don't change the rules for elections when you get too close to election. Better to go with a scheme that may not be constitutional than create havoc by changing the system. So My analysis is we're not going to have a closed primary. We're going to have a lot of egg on the face of Tony Babauta, which is where it belongs. And all of it works in the favor of Felix Camacho. The best thing for Felix would be if San Nicolas said, I'm going to run as an independent. Because what would happen then, you got 3 really strong candidates in the general. None of them was going to get a majority. It's going to go to a runoff. And you know that the Lou and Michael supporters are not going to, they're not going, whichever one of them makes the runoff is not going to get the support of the other one, and Felix wins.
Right, and that's usually how they do it, because the Republican Party is actually a much smaller tent than the Democratic tent, and that's how they usually win, is they are able to play off of the bitterness and division of the other party.
Well, it is a much smaller tent because for the Republicans only want honest, God-fearing, right-thinking people inside their tent. The others can go to the Democrat tent.
Yeah, well, it's going to be an interesting election, and I can't remember any time when there wasn't an interesting election. What about you, Uncle Bob?
Yeah, there's always some dimension, some angle that makes everyone a little bit different from the others, and it's one of the greatest spectator sports in the United States, Guam elections.
That could be a Netflix series.
Yeah, that'd be a good one, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we could finally find something else we can make money on.
Yeah. If it were a Netflix series, I wonder what actor they'd get to play the host of Tall Tales. Leonardo DiCaprio? No. George Clooney?
Maybe Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp. Okay, that's enough of that one. Thanks for calling, Repeat. We'll see you tomorrow. All right. Okay, here we go. Let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Getting ready for the surge. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News.
We will continue to enforce our immigration laws.
Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas spelling out for lawmakers on Capitol Hill Wednesday his plans to handle the expected surge of migrants at the southern border.
Unconvinced, his 6-point, 20-page plan to address the migrant surge once Title 42 is lifted will suffice.
There is no question that if we encounter 18,000 people in a single day, that will seriously strain our capabilities.
One piece of that plan, sending 600 law enforcement personnel from other government agencies to help Customs and Border Protection, a force already 23,000 strong and struggling to contain the current levels of illegal crossings, averaging 7,000 a day.
Fox's Jackie Heinrich, a federal judge ordering the administration to stop phasing out Title 42, while a lawsuit filed by several states to keep it in place is still pending. President Biden will travel to the Far East next month to meet with the leaders of South Korea and Japan to discuss growing threats from China and North Korea. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is in Ukraine to meet today with President Zelensky, 2 days after meeting with Russia's President Vladimir Putin. A 14-year-old boy is now charged with the murder Sunday of 10-year-old Lily Peters in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. District Attorney Wade Newell asking a judge to hold him on $1 million bond.
Given the statements that the defendant made to law enforcement that his intention was to rape and kill the victim from the get-go when he left the house with the victim going down the trail, the state believes that there is a need to protect the community.
The boy, identified in court only by his initials, is charged with first-degree intentional homicide and sexual assault. He will be tried as an adult under Wisconsin state law. America is listening to